Hiya, juniors. How are you? So, next week and a half, we're looking at the Spanish Empire in the New World. And we're going to be talking a lot about the ways in which Spanish culture impacted the Americas and the culture that we've inherited. And so we're going to start at the beginning of Spain, the Kingdom of Spain, its own beginnings, which I'm going to date to about 1479, okay? Now, the origins of this story go back 10 years earlier to 1469 in a secret marriage between Ferdinand, Prince of Aragon, and Isabella, Princess of Castilla. Both of these kingdoms lie in what is now Spain, and these two kingdoms coming together in the marriage of Ferdinand and Isabella is where we get the origins of that Kingdom of Spain, okay? So Ferdinand came from the Kingdom of Aragon, which is closer to the mountains that divide modern-day France from Spain. Those are the Pyrenees Mountains. And Ferdinand, in 1469, was 17 years old. He was the heir to the throne in Aragon, and the kingdom there was in trouble. The kingdom had been destabilized by a civil war within the kingdom. His father had come out on top of in the civil war, but there was a lot of social unrest because of the aftermath of that civil war. And as part of the buildup to that war, there had been declining trade for the merchants in Aragon. And they were the ones that made all the money in Aragon, the merchants. They would trade with other Mediterranean kingdoms. And so the Kingdom of Aragon was in trouble and it needed help. And the Kingdom of Castilla was much stronger, much more vital, much more rich, much more stable. And so Aragon needed Castilla to stabilize itself, okay? So Ferdinand, 17 years old, is very interested in marrying Isabella, 18 years old, and bringing about this union between the two kingdoms. Isabella, from her perspective, right? She has a lot of opportunities. Everybody wants to marry Isabella. Well, not everybody, but like 3 people. So Ferdinand, and then the King of Portugal, who's a different guy, but he's old, and he's on the other side of the Iberian Peninsula. That's what the whole landmass that Spain is on, the Iberian Peninsula. So the King of Portugal is old, but he wants to marry Isabella. She's not too keen on that. And then the King of France wants to marry his son to Isabella. So she's got a lot of options, okay? Now, aside from having a lot of options, she's also under a lot of pressure from people in her own kingdom. Most of all from her brother, Henry, who is the King of Castilla. And he's not a great guy, at least not for Isabella, not for her purposes, right? Now, why? Why is he not a very good guy? Well, he's trying to, so first of all, there's different factions within Castilla. The aristocracy, the nobility in Castilla are all divided up. And some of them support Isabella being the heir of her brother, and some of them support this other lady, this other young woman, Juana, who is the illegitimate daughter of Henry IV. And these different factions of aristocrats, they put pressure on the king to name their favorite as the heir. And so Henry has been bribed by 1469 to name his sister Isabella as the heir, which he has done, but he's done it in the expectation that he can use Isabella as a pawn to marry her off to Portugal or France and become more powerful, more rich himself. He has no interest in Aragon, that kingdom that's a little bit a loser kingdom right now, right? It's not on the ups. Okay, so Henry's putting, he's named Isabella as the heir at this point, and he wants her to marry not Ferdinand, okay? So recap, we've got Ferdinand, Prince of Aragon, Isabella, Princess of Castilla, her brother Henry, who's the King of Castilla, and then this other girl, Juana, Henry's daughter, who he might name as the heir of Castilla, even though right now he's named his sister. So we've got these 4 characters, Ferdinand, Isabella, Henry, and Juana, okay? All right, but it all comes down to Isabella and what she's going to do, because she gets to marry whoever she likes. If she's pressured into the marriage, they're Christian, they're Catholic. The Catholic Church says the marriage is no good. It's an invalid marriage if Isabella doesn't get to enter into it freely. So she gets to make her own decision here. And one of her confidants is the Bishop of Toledo, and he is encouraging her to choose Ferdinand. Why? Well, Ferdinand has the weaker kingdom, and so he's going to owe a lot to Isabella if she chooses him. And since he might owe a lot to Isabella, he might be a big help to her in strengthening the faction of aristocrats within Castilla who are loyal to her. And the more aristocrats that she has who are loyal to her, the more stable her rule will be if she becomes the queen of Castilla. Also, he's about her age, so that's a lot more appealing, I'm sure. Portugal is an old guy. And, Ferdinand, he likes Isabella. So there you go. So they've never met each other, but they're about the same age. So that's another thing for them. So anyway, she decides she's going to choose Ferdinand. But she has to do it secretly because her brother, has put her under house arrest in order to prevent her from marrying Ferdinand, so he can marry her off to somebody else. So the Archbishop of Toledo, Isabella's friend, has to rescue her from the house arrest. Ferdinand comes across the border of the country in disguise as a merchant. They meet secretly at Valladolid. They have a secret wedding there 4 days after meeting each other. And then the main thing was get the wedding done, have the wedding. It's a valid wedding. Then you can't end it. You can't disrupt it. Henry's stuck. They're married now. Okay, so that was the main issue for the Isabella faction. The pro-Isabella faction was secretly get her married to Ferdinand. So they got that done. Okay. Now, once that's done, all the people that don't support Isabella are angry. And they're pressuring Henry to name Juana as the heir, okay? And so these factions, the pro-Isabella faction, she's now married to Ferdinand, the pro-Juana faction, remember she's the daughter of Henry IV, they're growing in animosity towards each other in the next 5 years. Henry, Isabella's brother, dies in 1574. And when he dies, civil war breaks out between the two factions, the Isabella faction and the Juana faction. And so now there's violence that's broken out. And the words of the Archbishop of Toledo, who had told Isabella, right, that Ferdinand's going to be a big help to you because he's going to owe you a lot and he's going to fight for you to stabilize your rule, those words came true. Ferdinand is a really good persuasive guy. He's good at getting other people on his side. So he's going around to all the other nobles in Castilla, and he's persuading them to support Isabella and not Juana. And he's also gets a big military victory at the Battle of Toro. So thanks to the efforts of Ferdinand, Isabella's faction wins the civil war. And then at that point, we can say Isabella is definitively the Queen of Castilla. Ferdinand is definitively at that point the King of Aragon. His father has passed away. And now the two kingdoms, Aragon and Castilla, can unite through this marriage that's already happened of Isabella and Ferdinand. So we date the founding of Spain to the end of that civil war when Isabella's faction won. And that date is 1479.